Welcome to Native Yoga Toddcast. So happy you are here. My goal with this channel is to bring inspirational speakers to the mic in the field of yoga, massage, bodywork, and beyond. Follow us at Native Yoga and check us out at nativeyogacenter.com. All right, let's begin. Welcome to Native Yoga Toddcast, where we explore the heart of yoga, movement, and mindful living. I'm your host, Tom McLaughlin, and today we're honored to have Richard Brook joining us, a teacher, a creator, and someone deeply committed to embodiment, presence, and creative wellness. Before we dive in, make sure you check out Moinhos-Velhos.com, a beautiful space and community where Richard and many others explore retreats, deep practice, and connection in nature, as well as juice cleanses. And don't forget to visit creativewellness.co.uk to discover more about Richard's work, his online resources, and creative approaches to well-being. The links are in the description. There's right in the beginning, we had a moment where his internet, he got cut off. So don't worry, I keep talking. He comes right back in. It's like 10 seconds. So hang in there with us. Thanks so much. All right, man, I had such a good time talking to Richard. He has so much enthusiasm and energy, and I think you're going to be able to feel it here as we discuss his journey through owning this retreat center and how passionate he is about sharing yoga, acupuncture, and wellness with the people that travel through Portugal. So let's go ahead and get started. Here we go. Man, what an opportunity. I'm so happy to be here with Richard Brook. Richard, how you doing, man? How you feeling?
Yeah, great. I mean, it's just really lovely to do things like this. I mean, it's like the cherry on the cake out of all the things I do, get to engage with someone, such a knowledgeable person, and get to share what I care about. I feel very happy to be here right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I feel the same way. And I'm excited to hear about your current adventure. If I understand correctly, you're in Portugal at a retreat center that you are managing and running and offering workshops and retreats at, called Moinhos Velhos. And we can find you on that website, moinhos-velhos.com, which is in the description, so people can click. Wow, that's a great endeavor. Can you start to help me understand why are you wanting to facilitate a retreat center?
So I first came here in 2014, so July 2014, and I had my own yoga and acupuncture business in London. And what tends to happen to me a lot when I spend a lot of time in the city, eventually it starts to get on top of me. And, while I love being in the creative maelstrom of somewhere like London, and I was teaching lots of different kind of niche events, and there's obviously a massive captive audience, for creative nuances when you're in a city, just the sheer act of being in the city would get on top of me. And what I find...
Uh-oh, Richard, I lost your vocal. I lost your voice, Richard. 1 second. Let's try to see if we can get your microphone to click back on. Let me see if I can't hear you. Oh, I lost you. Oh man, that was quick. I hope the internet's going to work. Let's see if he pops back in. I wonder, he's in Portugal and in the country is what I believe we were just getting into. And I think that the internet just crashed and here he comes back in. All right, Richard, can you hear me? Let me see if I can hear you. Go ahead and say something. I can't hear you yet. Can't hear you. Shaking my head.
Oh, that's so...
Now I can. Welcome to the joys of owning a retreat center, where the internet may or may not work when you want it to. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got good... I've got like over 100 megs at the minute, so I don't really know what happened there.
All right. Well, what?
Sorry.
Don't worry. You know what? I kept talking and I started explaining to people we lost a connection and now and here you are. So I think let's continue on here.
Yeah, sure. So I eventually decided I need to get out of the city, and I was reflecting back on my life and I thought, okay, so when have I been happy? I've been happy when I'm working in a team. I remembered when I was working out in nature one year, I was in New Hampshire in the US working in the summer camp, felt really amazing. And I'm obviously happy doing the things that I love, like, doing the holistic stuff. Rolled it all together in my mind and I thought, right, so if I find a retreat center, I can do all those things together. I'll be in nature, I'll be around people, and I get to do the things I love. Well, obviously, what I realised when I first started to search, usually retreat centres don't really host their own thing. They're normally a building that you just rent out. And eventually, through a bit of good fortune, I ended up getting connected with this place in Portugal. I'd been watching a TV programme called The Spa of Embarrassing Illnesses, which was a programme which was following around a group of detox facilitators. And I remembered the name of their acupuncturist and yoga teacher, and he was amazing, a guy called Yair Sagi. I later met him, but anyway, I emailed him, said, I want to do what you do. How do I go about it? He said, well, our company hasn't got any spaces, but try this place in Portugal, Moinhos Velhos. And I came out here, and within 2 weeks, I felt completely different. Initially, my first, tranche of time was just a month. But within 2 weeks, I went from being this kind of tight, decrepit, pizza CSI watching, just not a good state I was in, to being out running every day, even all this connection, doing the subtle things I love with the teaching and the workshops. And I think in your life, once you push the bar up so high, someone said to me once you've tasted the light, there's no going back. I went back to London after a month, but after that point in time, it's always about getting back here. It's like, what am I going to do to keep my relationship going with this place? Did a year and a half backwards and forwards because I was still running my business in London before finally I made the full transition to coming out here. That wasn't the end of that story, but I'll just share that bit for now in case you got anything on that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I hear you. I mean, I love the fact that you did a little homework. You didn't just like go on a home buying website and say, I'm moving to that place. And then, you went and checked it out, which seems very smart. I would imagine that'd be critical. And then obviously, since that kindled the fire and spirit to get back there, the amount of work it would take to continue that momentum. And here now, are you officially grounded and landed there? Like are you planning?
Yeah,
Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, the journey since then, there's been several ups and downs. So, first of all, I did the year and a half backwards and forwards. And that was really interesting because I think if you go somewhere once, you can have quite a random experience somewhere. But if you actually go backwards and forwards, like I did every month, so I'd come to Portugal for 10 days every month and then back to London, you actually get really clear really quickly about how each place affects you. And again, I noticed every time I come to Portugal, I felt so light, I felt so connected to my body. And what I recognised going back to London, it didn't really psychologically matter how I approached it. I could be going back there thinking, right, I'm going to stay connected to my body. I'm going to make sure every day I'm doing my practices. Just when I got back in the creative stew, it creates a certain outcome in me. And it just made me realise there's a certain set of ingredients that creates a certain outcome. I'd get back in the city, I'd immediately feel lonely because I'm going from being in a community here to stepping foot into a massive city. You're calling up your friends, you can't meet them for 5 days, chaos all around you. And yeah, and I became this person in that version of me, which I didn't particularly enjoy.
Yeah.
And so so eventually I worked my way here fully. I did a year and a half where I felt really on top of my game. So when I was initially here, it was like walking into a treasure trove from a professional point of view. So the owners at the time, they really liked me. So, like, okay, on the programs, you can more or less teach how many yoga classes you want. You can do as many different evening meditations as you want. You can do table talks. You can practice acupuncture. And I was like, oh my God, all these things that are so dispersed for me in London, I can do all within like a radius of 50 meters. I can get in people's heads. I can connect with the heart. I can teach them. I can treat them. I can do all these different things. And so I did that for then about a year and a half, felt amazing. But you know what? I still had this image in my head of success related to being successful in a city. I think it gets etched in your third eye when you're younger, this idea of maybe having an apartment in the city, earning good money, all that type of stuff. So I went back to London in 2018 And it went completely the opposite. I thought I could go back there, switch on all my yoga classes, get my acupuncture patients back, but I went back there and basically just had to start picking up loads of temp work. And it really made me realize that you can't recreate something. Before I'd left to come to Portugal, my yoga business was called Creative Yoga London. And I was doing lots of fun yoga events that involved connecting people together. I was doing yoga classes for single people. I was doing yoga classes for couples. I was doing these big kind of yoga rave events. I was doing something called Social Yoga Tuesdays where we'd do the class and hang out after. I thought I'll come back. I'll switch all that on, and it just didn't work, And I thought, okay, it's gone. I'm trying to go back to something rather than forward to something. And within 6 months, I was then utterly desperate to get back out the city again. As then I ended up coming back here eventually. And to fast forward to where we are now, me and my colleagues, we now own this place. So we actually bought it just over a month ago. We worked under the original owners. Someone else bought it, and we've now bought it off him. So I've eventually worked my way up to kind of be in the position that I genuinely dreamed about. When I first came here, I felt my heart open the moment I walked on the place. I remember sitting down one of the first days and looking at the founder, Frank, sitting at the table with the guests and just thinking, oh my God, what would it be to own a place like this, to run these programs? I just couldn't. It was the height of summer, amazing people, and yeah, I'm there.
Nice.
But as is the way, there's a little bit of a different reality. So it means I'm not so much on the front line anymore. I'm doing a lot of managerial stuff with what comes with that. And my determination this year is actually to get back in front of the guests more because I miss it. I miss the teaching elements. So this year I'm cranking up my teaching workload again.
Yeah. Wow. I hear you. Well, I have to interject a little because you said when you were there, you went back to London in 2018, things didn't work so good, but
Yeah.
then fast forward 2 years, COVID happened. What sort of correlation or coordination occurred in relation to the fact that that really shut things down? Where were you for, say, 2020 through 2021? 2022.
Well, that was really interesting. Yeah. So so I went back to London 2018 and I actually ended up rolling like a stone a little bit in 2018, 2019 because I couldn't get back here straight away. And so I actually wrote my book during that time.
Ah,
And then just when we got, but you know what? I always wanted to come back here, like always. And I kept emailing them and, they didn't really have space. And just before COVID happened, I'd been back in England, didn't work for me. And I thought, okay, the only place I really feel comfortable is actually in the Algarve. So I thought I'll head back here without knowing eventually where I'd end up. And on my way down, I called this centre again one more time, spoke to the boss at the time and said, look, can I even just come to be here? It was a dream of mine to get back here because I felt when I left the first time, I always thought I could get back and circumstances meant I couldn't. And they said, yeah, fine, come back then. Things weren't going so well for the centre at the time. I got back here. And within like a very short period of time, the start of 2020, that was when lockdown come. And if I hadn't have made that call, right, when I was driving through France or Spain, I don't think I would ever have got back here. And the thing was, when I wasn't here, I felt like I'd messed up my entire destiny. I felt like I was stepping outside of what my purpose was. And I was literally thinking to myself, this lifetime, I've made a right mess of it. I've completely made a mess. And I'm going to have to wait till I come back again to get back on purpose. And so I was so lucky to get back in. And then when COVID came, we did 2 6-month periods of complete lockdown. There was no money coming through the centre. We got to live out in nature. So that was lucky. So we weren't so exposed to some of the stuff that people were in cities. But, it was tough, like financially for the centre at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. I think it was tough for everybody, right? I mean, obviously a few people made well, like Zoom and everything, but for those of us that were working in a close quarter space, hands-on, I work as a massage therapist as well, or, like acupuncture where we're, making contact. It was an interesting challenge for sure. Well, what sort of takeaway have you received in relation to watching all these challenges that have come your way and where you are now? And then for our listeners that probably are experiencing some challenges too. In relation to what you said about, I felt like I was not following my path, or what value do you feel there is in those moments of feeling like you're not doing what you really dream of doing, that you're going backwards, so to speak. Do you feel there's
Yeah,
value? Do you feel there's value in that? When you look back on that, can you pull some value out of that sort of struggle?
yeah, absolutely. Because it kind of taught me in a way, you've got to be very careful what you quit on. And it's to do with where the point of engagement is. It's like when I actually go into a yoga pose, it's like when am I not pushing and when am I not holding back? And like, so even though there's challenges in it right now, it interests me. Like, I think there's nothing worse in a way than when your soul is a little bit bored with what you're doing. So even though right now I've got a load of challenges going on, some part of me is super, super interested in it. And sometimes we get these times in our life where we just think, oh, it's all too much. But having stepped almost completely out of that for 2 years and felt like what a black hole that actually was, I'm very careful now not to relinquish something that's got value in the same way. Like I said, but there is a sweet
Mm,
spot because that also doesn't mean making yourself a martyr to the cause and also putting yourself through a lot of pain when it's not really feeding you. But there's a nice point of engagement where I feel interested and engaged what I do. Like I said, just when I teach it actually in my yoga classes, we go into a twist, and I tell the guys, I said, when you first go into this twist, I want you to stop at your first point of resistance because that's what engages you. If you stay there too long, you're going to get bored. So then you have to move a little bit further. But then you also don't want to force yourself into this posture, like use loads of energy and not feel comfortable either. So for me, it's like this sweet spot in life. And yes, the value is in not relinquishing stuff too soon because I've seen the edges. I think I've been overoccupied sometimes in my life and stayed too long in things. And then I feel like I've also walked down a path where I've been bereft of purpose and it wasn't nice. I didn't like it at all.
yes. Yeah, I hear you on that. Well, I can definitely relate. As an acupuncturist and a yoga practitioner, when we look at yoga philosophy and or theory, we hear about the 72,000 nadis that make up the energy channels of the body. Then we go over
Hmm.
to something like Chinese medicine, where we see different meridians associated with specific organs.
Yeah.
What sort of correlations have you made in relation to the similarities of what yoga is attempting to do and what Chinese medicine is attempting to do? And what differences have you found where each one really does stand alone in its own sort of purpose?
Well, that's a really interesting question. So maybe I'll start with a bit that I think overlaps the most first. So in
Okay.
both Chinese medicine and in the style of yoga that I teach, Drew Yoga, we talk about the heart as being the supreme controller and the heart having a sense of primacy. And so for me, like when I'm treating someone with acupuncture, as skillfully as I can, I've got to try and get as close to their heart. Because if your heart isn't really in something or engaged in something or energetically opened, then everything else tends to go into a state of distress. Like we see it as like the king, sitting on his throne and he's passing out all the messages around all his soldiers. And if the king suddenly goes missing, everything else falls into disarray. And with the style of yoga I teach, there's a massive focus on the Anahata chakra, so I teach in a really light way. I try and make it fun and I try and, cultivate an atmosphere in the space where I feel people's hearts is enabled to open. And for me, that's by teaching in a soft way, because that's what suits me. When I start my classes, I'm often talking to people. I'm saying that there's a big difference here between me saying, right, you're going to do a chest opener and crank your chest open. I said, that is not the same as your heart energetically feeling met. And I'm aware there's lots of different styles of yoga, so it's kind of what switches you on. But for me, then, when they're in the yoga class, opening the heart, we've got this phrase also in Chinese medicine. We say where the heart is like the quietest whisper of any of the voices that you hear in your head. And it's the yoga that takes me there. It's the yoga that sufficiently quietens me down and creates the balance in me. And when you push that heart energy up to the surface, the same way as it does in acupuncture, it sort of takes command again of your energetic network. Also, when I push the heart to the surface in a yoga class, I think then you start to hear your deeper, more creative self, and that's where you find the space to touch into what these deeper parts of you are. And I used to use like yoga and meditation a lot in the past when I first discovered it. actually is the way I think of trying to get around and do a bit of bypassing. And then later on in my life, I learned that the inward journey that I take when I do yoga and meditation is bringing me closer to my creative voice, which needs to then take me out into the world to act on it. I always used to think it was all about letting go, let go of everything, let go, let go, let go. And actually, that's where I find my creative impulses. So that's one layer where I think there's a real, strong
Let's
overlap.
go.
And then
Yeah.
obviously physiologically with the meridians, you could obviously with things like yin yoga, it's a specific kind of yoga which really maps the engagement with the meridians. But you can apply that to any kind of yoga. Just when someone goes into a particular asana, you can look at it and think, okay, so there's an engagement there with the bladder channel, there's engagement with the small intestine channel. But you know, I'm going to slightly segue, and I hope it's okay, but
Please.
I think we actually do yoga to keep us flexible so we can dance. Because the one thing that I find can really hit the mark in your body in a different
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
I actually think yoga can still be quite prescribed, right? And some things you do can really be on the money with what you need right now. But when you actually really let your body off the leash and you really let it dance and move, then I think it finds what it actually needs to move. But without the flexibility that yoga provides, also
Yeah.
maybe not so great either. So I think we need all these levels.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, cool. Amazing answer. Thank you so much. I'm curious, how can I, as a yoga practitioner that is not trained in traditional Chinese medicine, doesn't have a understanding of how it works, why it works, and all this, how can I get more in touch with my internal organs? Like when you say things like kidney meridian, spleen meridian, or, and then
Yeah,
and then I think spleen. I don't know what the heck the spleen, like, I mean, I might have looked at it in
yeah.
that, but is there a way that
Mhm.
we could get a little more interactive with our individual organs to have appreciation for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got the more classical theories, I guess, where you could even, I mean, in a sense, you could analyze your own behaviors. So let's say, you're talking about the spleen. You could look at your own behaviors. Are you someone who likes to give a lot or actually gives too little? Because every organ's kind of got a spectrum. Are you someone who pays a lot of attention to your body and your basic needs? Are you someone who's able to receive really well? Or are you someone who always feels like your plate's empty no matter what you've got in front of you? When you talk, have you got like a sing-song type of voice? Because different organs come with different qualities of voice. Sometimes even what people smell like, there's a whole influence there. The emotional disposition, someone who's got a lot of spleen energy, they tend to emit a lot of sympathy for other people, again, or tend to be really cold. It can be either. But the bit I really like, and something I wrote quite extensively about, is how do we experience the energy of these organs from within? So, a body of work that I put together, which I'll talk about quite a lot in my book, is actually when each organ inside of you is kind of in ascendancy, it comes with a voice and a feeling inside of you. And some of these are really obvious, right? When we talk about, oh, my stomach's empty, I feel hungry, and I'm thinking about soup or whatever it might be, burgers, I don't know, depending on what your tendency is, Or we talk about when our heart's really open, we recognize it as obvious, we feel a lot of joy, and maybe we're thinking lots of thoughts about things we're passionate about and people who we love. I put together a body of work through a lot of meditation, fused it with five elements theory, and kind of came up with a set of internal voices for each particular element or organ. And I used to sit and watch my own narrative. I've always been really good at that. I even remember when I was a kid, I'd be walking down the road, and as if I was kind of watching myself, I'd be thinking, okay, what am I going to think about between where I am now and by the time I walk to the
Mm,
end of the street?
yeah.
And so I really like to sit and observe these internal, I guess, dialogues, if you like. And
Yeah.
again, in my initial understanding, when I first started doing stuff like meditation, the mind was an enemy. I was like, I wanted to do meditation to get away from it, right? Until I started to realize, hang on, some of these voices in my head have actually got sense behind them. And that's the body mind talking to you that's got intelligence. There's lots of layers to the mind, but one layer is the body mind. So for example, when I'm thinking structured thoughts to do with planning and decision making, places I need to go, things I need to do, it's my liver and gallbladder. When I'm thinking about things I'm passionate about, maybe, intimacy, connection with people, again, slightly more obvious one. It's your heart talking to you, your heart and small intestine are paired together. When you're thinking about food, meeting your basic needs, stomach and spleen, when you're feeling the need to create space and throw things away, that's the metal element, which is your lungs and large intestine. And when you're having thoughts that reflect on the past, it's your water element of your kidney and bladder. It's also the element within where we generate wisdom. Something happens, we spin it round like a washing machine, kind of trying to clear it up, and we get a bit of wisdom from it. It's like, okay, this and that happened. I'm going to reflect on it. Next time I'm going to do it different. And I love now watching these different parts of me talk to me, because it really helped my relationship with myself, to understand that these voices in my head aren't something I need to run away from. They're trying to tell me what I need in my life, and because five elements theory basically says that, if you live in tune with these different aspects of yourself, you're going to be well. You need some barometer for understanding how you're relating with them. And these internal voices for me are that.
Mm, phenomenal. Love it, man. Great explanation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that perhaps get involved in some sort of life track where then they get really stressed out. I mean, you and I still get stressed out. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I still get stressed out. So I'm not saying that working as a yoga teacher solves problems of not getting stressed out. And then needing a little bit of therapy, needing some treatment, find someone like you who spent a
Mhm.
lot of time studying and learning and working with people and figuring out what works and how to then use that to further the skill. And this individual then goes, wow, I wish I could work in that space. That's incredible. So I guess my question for you is, at what point in your life did you trust yourself enough to believe you could earn a living doing what you're doing? And was there a struggle there, or was it just a natural fit? Just because of the simple fact that you mentioned, even as a child, you had a contemplative nature. The fact that you even looked down the road and said, I'm going to walk from here to there, and I can't wait to see what thoughts are going to appear between here and there, and to be paying attention like that. That's a interesting thing that I guess as a human, we probably all do this. Maybe, I don't know how much of us are aware that we're doing that, but so I guess
Mhm.
to get back to my point, was that an easy flow for you to jump into this field, or did you go through some difficult stuff before you finally decided I'm going this direction?
What an amazing question. Really, really, you're hitting the mark here, I've got to tell you. So, like, for me, I guess, when I was growing up, it was in, the 80s and 90s. I left school in the mid 90s. And I guess with some of the skills and talents I've got, I wasn't necessarily born into an environment which really fostered them. So I was basically considered to be a bit shy and sensitive, as if it was a fault, by the people around me. But obviously, I also recognise that everyone used to like to talk to me whenever people had problems at school. They used to say, "Oh, you're a great listener." And yeah, but it wasn't as if any of the people around me, it wasn't like my careers advisors would be saying to me at that age, "You know what, you make a great acupuncturist." Or my parents were saying, "You really should perhaps consider being a yoga teacher." Because, back in the early to mid
No,
90s, right, it wasn't even a
no.
thing. And it's not even in their terms of reference, right? This is a big
Yeah,
thing for me,
yeah,
your parents, or for my parents, like, bless them, they really wanted the best for me, but their framework was that I might be a good lawyer or a good accountant or whatever. And so I suppose there's two things. There was the recognition eventually that when I was doing holistic things, it started to make me feel good. And when I wasn't doing that, I started to not feel good, and I ended up getting chronic fatigue basically, because I always felt that the holistic side of me needed to be on the side. I had more conventional jobs, that, like, my early jobs, I was like managing a supermarket and stuff like this and getting really burnt out. And then in the evening, I'd go off to a yoga class or whatever. But I suppose, again, it's something that gets burned in. It gets burned into your belief system when you're early, and also not supported by the environment I was particularly in during that time. That wasn't really a career path, and I was a little bit scared to also confront family about it, maybe, and also say, "You know what, mom, dad, I fancy doing X, Y, or Z." And when I eventually did do that, they were just happy for me. And I think I just took it on so much, and I projected it onto them actually slightly. I think in the end that they wouldn't actually like it if I relinquished all these things which my education had taken me towards and which had a higher value judgment. It felt like there's a higher value judgment in, being a manager in a supermarket and earning good money than dropping all that and going to an acupuncture college. But I was really reminded when I eventually ended up starting to study the holistic stuff of the first dean at the acupuncture college I was at the day I went to visit there for the open day. He opened up his talk by saying, look, we tend to get sick for two reasons. Either we're doing too much of something that we shouldn't be doing, or we're not doing enough for something we should, which is actually more or less the same thing, right? It basically
Yeah.
means you A on the thing you're meant to do. And I thought, you know what, he's right. I'd had chronic fatigue for a year, hadn't worked. And what had happened is I'd had a year off. I went back to work, and within 6 weeks, I was really sick again. And I was on my hands and knees in my bedroom thinking, oh my God, I can't even have a basic job. Because I went back to work in a really basic job. And I remembered being there, and eventually the penny dropped. I thought, well, hang on, in this year when I've had fatigue and not worked, actually, when I've gone to a yoga class, I feel fine. When I've been going to this reflexology evening class, I feel fine. When I'm sitting down and reading all these books on Taoism, I feel fine. So eventually I just put two and two together and thought, so what if? What if I actually validate this as my life path?
Mm.
And then a series of quite incredible coincidences happened, which is a whole thing in itself. And, I ended up studying acupuncture. But I think validating what your skills are, and I call it following the clues. So if anyone out here is listening, I think a lot of people are born with inherent healing skills. I don't necessarily mean it means you have to drop the rest of your life in order to do them, because I think health and well-being is also about a sense of direction. And as long as we're moving towards the things that feed our soul. So if you've got a healing skill and not using it, as you start to move towards using it more, great. But it doesn't mean you can't maybe do your other job at the same time. You just got to be pointing in the right direction at life. And maybe eventually it will flip over.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
turn the volume down enough on one thing and you
Yeah.
turn the volume up enough on the other,
Yeah.
and then
Good
it does its
analogy.
own thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you explain that, because it's like, I think of all the years that go into, here we are now. And so to be able to see it from that level of, and I love the analogy, very simple, just turning the volume down on one and up on the other, and very gradual shift. So it's not like all
Yeah.
volume off, full blast. I mean, full blast on the other won't even happen. And
Yeah.
you really, that's not even possible. You have to start from
No.
zero. And I mean,
It's a trick of the
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Absolutely a trick of the mind. It
Trick of
like
the
the
mind.
mind likes black and white, right? Life is the grey bit, right? As long as you're walking in the right direction, you tend to get there eventually.
It's cool, Richard. I feel inspired talking to you. I'm just glad that you believed in yourself enough to go forward, because I can feel your passion, excitement for what you're doing and what you're into. So now that you've made it here, you have a retreat center. I guess first question, are yoga teachers and or retreat facilitators renting space at the center that you now own, or are you the full-time, you and your team, the full-time caregivers, so to speak, and people are coming and visiting? How are you planning to structure it?
So a little bit of both, right? So this centre was set up as a specialist juice detox and yoga retreat. So it's set up in 1992 by a Norwegian couple. So it's always done those programs. And so obviously I worked for them for years, along with my three colleagues who we now own the place. So when they got old and unfortunately passed on, we just kept on running the programs, because basically we were running the programs on ground level anyway. So we carried on running these juice detox and yoga retreats. We've gently evolved them in different ways, as things go along, you change and tweak little things. But essentially the intelligence in the place is running these juice detox and yoga retreats. So we do 25 a year, and it leaves about 1 week every month where we've got a space. And actually this year, for pretty much the first time in its history, we're actually having a really big push on trying to fill those gaps between our own programs. I mean, we can't work every week back to back. You just can't. But what we've found is that having a week in between where you've got someone else's retreat on the site actually keeps the energy levels up here. And it's actually quite nice. it's fun. Like our programs are really therapeutically intense, and I don't want to put any illusions out here that sometimes it doesn't take a lot of energy because it does. Like it really does. And when you've done like 14 days in a row, 2 7-day programs together, you need a week off. And having
Mm,
someone else on
mm.
site at that point
Yeah,
doing their
yeah.
thing would be joyful for us. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool, man. So I have done juice cleanses before. I found it very interesting. I started small, 3 day, then I did a 5 day, and then another time a 7 day. And I think the longest I went was a 14 day. And then
Good.
I stopped doing them because, um, they're always in the back of my mind. Like, I probably should do 3 days right now, like I had a little too fun over the
Hmm.
holidays and it would feel good to like, so I guess I want to pick your brain a little bit about, what do you think of them? What is your thought now after hosting them for a long period of time? I have a lot of questions. I'm so curious because I think that, well,
Yeah.
number one, if you were hosting people that were coming in for a 7 day juice cleanse, just in terms of like what you're saying with intensity, I mean, people go through some serious emotional experiences when you just go on juice for a little while, and all of our food cravings, all of the baggage that we carry in our bodies about our beliefs about food. Also, the highs are pretty good too. I mean, I've had incredible highs where I'm like, why am I eating so much? What is the purpose of all that
Mm.
extra food? That's just weighing me down. I feel so great, but I've also not felt so great either. So, and I know dealing and coaching people along through that process must be an interesting experience. It couldn't be easy all the time. So I can understand what you're saying. What are some of the things that you've noticed in, I guess I should just find out, like when you have people do juice cleanses, are you doing strictly juice, or what is your protocols in working with people?
Yeah, so we do 7 or 10 days. Occasionally guests might stop for two lots of seven together. Yeah, it's interesting, like I said, because when I first started here, I was really on the front line, but the bit of the program I really plugged into was that the program was more than just a juice cleanse. It was a chance to help to transform people. So, you had Frank and Anna Corinne and Janny at the time. Had been working as the management team and responsible for setting the programs up. And they were all interested in what's happening in your colon, what's coming out of you and what it looks like, all these interactions on that level. And the same way now, I work with a nutritionist, and one of my colleagues, Chris, he loves to talk about what's coming out the everything into all that stuff. They love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But for me, the bit that I plug into is we're programmed for body, mind, and spirit. So it's like, how are we going to make these people? I don't know, that sounds really kind of cliche. How am I going to make these people better people? But it's like the bit I'm interested in is getting them in here, also teaching them yoga, teaching them meditation, helping them to learn holistic principles, how to learn to manage the stress in their life, how to get more connected with themselves, so that when they go back out, that then they'll also living their life in a better way. And in itself, the bit that I'm really interested in could even stand alone as its own program. But obviously, having worked with the juice detox aspect of it for so long, what I recognize is it also makes people really malleable. Like I said, people are going into such deep, intense therapeutic practice. Because I noticed when we have had other retreats on the site, it doesn't even feel like it scrapes the surface. Like occasionally, we've done very similar programs, but with food. And I'm like, it doesn't even really feel like anyone's here because people go so deeply into an entire cleansing process. Because as you alluded to, there's a lot of social stuff, there's a lot of psychosocial, psycho-spiritual stuff, emotional stuff that also comes up while you're cleansing. And
Mm,
that's why we've got a bunch of therapies. So we do yoga in the morning between 8 and 10, which is obviously on a physiological level, it really works for the meridians. You're nicely squeezing your intestines and all that kind of thing. But it also starts to bring up a lot of, unprocessed emotion. And then we do 3 juices a day and a broth in the evening. But in the morning, people can go and have treatments. So obviously, I do acupuncture. We've got several different types of body work. Another juice at 1 o'clock. In the afternoon, they can have more treatments. We do a table talk with another juice at 4 o'clock. So here we've got a nutritionist, starts the week telling them all about autophagy, all the different, because some people really come for that. They love that side of it. Other people are coming because they want to get away from the city, right? They're burnt out. They've been living a bit too hard and they need a reset. After 4 o'clock table, they can then go and have a sauna, swim in the pool. And then as an evening meditation, we do lots of things. Sometimes we do an ecstatic dance. I used to do a workshop on life purpose. We've got a sound healing session. My colleague Chris, sort of devout Shivananda yogi, does this Shivananda inspired fire ceremony, the Agni-Hotra ceremony. We do a tea ceremony, and we've got some great people here, all plugging in their thing, really enthusiastic facilitators. And so no matter which bit of it you're interested in, if you're really interested in even just losing weight, because people come for that as well, but whatever your point is you arrive, there's a lot of different dimensions and spectrums of personal development going on here. Whether you just need some space and you want to go for a walk around the reservoir every day, or if you want to have time and space to really connect with yourself and dive deep into the therapies, we can cater to the whole lot. We hit every level basically.
Yeah. Incredible. Amazing. Yeah. You're bringing it all in. So I can understand what you're saying. People can find interest in, and then open up their mind to a whole nother thing. So incredible. So I'm also curious, have you had to, or do you speak Portuguese?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I really hope that you're enjoying this episode, and I just wanted to take a moment to announce a course that I'm really excited to release. It's a free course, and it's called 8 in 8, Learn 8 Limb Yoga in 8 days. My goal is to help coach you along in the Ashtanga yoga practice in a way where we take just the sun salutations, the fundamental asanas, and the final breathing poses, break it down with some philosophy videos as well, explaining the 8 limbs of Ashtanga yoga in a very easy to use, friendly course that is totally free. Click the link below, check it out. Let me know what you think. All right, let's get back to the episode.
No, not really. Not really. I've been here 11 years, right? And where I am in the Algarve is a big expat community. We all speak English on the site, right? So we've very rarely even had Portuguese staff. So in this little bubble, it's never really felt necessary.
Yeah.
When I go into Lagos, which is the nearest town, it's a tourist town, so the people here tend to mold to you. But when I'm out, and if I'm being honest, particularly if I'm on a date with a Portuguese woman, then it tends to come up as a problem because they find it a little bit offensive, to be honest. I haven't learnt it. And when I went to live in Lisbon, I lived in Lisbon for a little bit in that 2 years I was away. Obviously, then you have to fit to the people there. So I actually made a real effort to learn it then. I used to go to a Portuguese yoga class, right? So I'm pretty good at actually knowing what the body parts are in Portuguese. And I reckon I could probably maybe read, maybe not write it so well, but when it comes to listening to it and speaking it, I've got very little confidence. It's just, I'm plenty intelligent, but that bit of my brain, it don't seem to be my best friend, if I'm being honest.
I hear you, Richard. Yeah, it's a tough thing to learn a new language. Oh my goodness. I have a good friend that he is from here in the States. He's multilingual in Spanish and Portuguese, and he just moved to Portugal, and he absolutely loves it. I've been hearing incredible things about it. So that's why I was just curious, like what it's like for you to live there, and how important is it to know the language and all that stuff. So I appreciate you filling me in on all that. Where are you in proximity? I'll go on the map when we're done, and I'll look on the map to find out exactly where you are. I apologize, I didn't do that first, but how far from the ocean are you?
For about 15 minutes.
Oh,
so
wow.
One of the things we do with the guests as well,
You're really close.
Take them out once a week to the beach. Yeah, exactly. So we're just north of Lagos. So Lagos is a really nice tourist area in the Algarve. So on the south coast, towards the southwest corner.
Nice.
And along the Algarve, you've got some resorts that are a little bit more, I don't know, like a more yang kind of tourism, shall we say, right? Stag parties and whatnot. Lagos is a bit more family friendly. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more of a kind of alternative traveller community in a sense. Lots of surfing and that goes on here. I struggle here in the winter. I ain't gonna lie. Like in the winter, there's no one else here. You've got lots of infrastructure, but not many people, and so I find that a bit of a struggle. But there's a lot of holistic things. The saturation level in this area for holistic events is absolutely outrageous. It's almost like as far south as you can get in Europe before you'd end up in Africa. And it's as if people have kind of got sucked down here who are
Interesting.
interested in conscious activity. And
Wow.
some people have told me, that they reckon there's very special properties. Now, I've never checked this right. I've never verified this, but someone even told me once that when it was the ice age, apparently it didn't ice over here or something. I stand to be corrected on that, but there's a massive amount of holistic stuff happening here. And our retreat centre, it sits on something called a synchronic line. So a synchronic line is like an energy conduit. And I don't know if you've heard of a place in Italy called Darmanhur. It's a spiritual, scientific and artistic community where these synchronic lines cross over. There's two of them that pass around the planet. And so what they did in Darmanhur is they built these underground caves, temples, that they put loads of high vibration information in, so it would feed out along these energy lines, and our centre sits on top of one of them.
Wow.
Plus there's loads of quartz in the ground here. So the energetic properties of this site are really special. It makes everything a bit more intense, but it feels like the energy here is pushing you up and out. It's really strong.
That's amazing. I mean, it sounds like you were picked up on that the first time you went there, because you said that you felt very like, wow, this place is incredible, so that, potentially that's what you were feeling.
I felt that even before I
Yeah.
arrived. I remember speaking to someone on the phone even before I came and just having this
Yeah.
this really lengthy conversation with them, as if some part of me was already here.
Yeah.
And then the day I actually walked onto the site, it's as if I could feel my heart opening. I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing.
That's cool.
Just a place of joy,
Yeah. Amazing. So then what, it sounds like you've gotten planted, you've been there officially as the co-owner operator for a month. Where's your vision moving forward? Just keep operations moving forward. I heard you say that you'd like to get out in front of people a little bit more. Maybe you find some assistance with the management side so that you're able to be offering the classes and treatments and interacting. But do you have even a further vision of, not that you need to go any further. I'm very,
no, that's good.
I'm excited about what you've achieved already. I'm curious because the nature of our minds is to like, now how am I going to interact with this?
Yeah.
What more could I do? So I'm curious. Yeah.
Well, this is great, right? Because actually this is where it started to be a bit more fun again, because the last 3 years we're actually just renting the site. And so there's very much a limit and a ceiling to what we could just do as the company running the retreats, right? But now we actually own the place. So I actually left and went and worked off site for 3 months last year because I just felt like I'd hit my point of, I'd hit my point where I wasn't feeling like I was growing anymore. I used to say to people, you could probably message me at any time of day and I'd even tell you where each person on the site is standing because it got that familiar. And so, so since we now own the place, there's a whole lot of new avenues and opportunities that have opened up. And I really love your question about is maybe some part of me making plans and whatever. And I think sometimes in our life, with that kind of wood element part of us, we know there's something we need to do, right? And we're really distinct that I've got this as a vision, as a plan. But sometimes it's also about embracing the unknown. And what I'm actually really enjoying at the minute is we know somehow we need to get this business to work. And obviously we've been managing the business for a few years, so more or less we know how it works financially. But we need to do things like increase our capacity. We need to get other retreats coming through this place. And just the connections we're going to make with that. Like already we've got, a group coming on the site later this year. People are doing a retreat, specifically people with alopecia and all this type of thing. And I'm getting a chance to meet these great people. And I've got the opportunity to do that because I'm in this position here.
Yeah.
So financially, we need to make it work, but also the creative opportunities that come from it. And, I feel very excited about that side of it. And
that's awesome.
Doing some renovation at the minute to increase the capacity. And there's all kinds of things we'd like to do, but, I'm not rushing either.
I hear
to call it the happy wanderer, Chinese medicine, you know where you're going, but you're not too rigid on the path either.
Yeah. Great answer. You made mention before we started our conversation that when you were interacting with people, and now that you're in the management side, you're appreciating a little more about what management had done for you in the past, in the sense that, like, you maybe walk into a really fun yoga event, and then, but the reality of what that building had to do to keep the electricity going and all that stuff, that's a lot. There's a lot of work there. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about, to those of us that are not aware of the behind the scenes work, and just how you're learning to integrate being good at both?
Oh, wow. So, I mean, I witness that every day, right? So, when I first started here, I was kind of in this middle tier. We have a lot of volunteers. We're essentially a community which runs the business, and we've got a lot of volunteer staff. It's great because we get people come in because they want to spend time with us and learn things. And we also get, obviously, to take, to use their skills in a mutual exchange. When I first got here, I was nicely ensconced in this place of working loads with guests, doing all these great workshops, having all the fun with the volunteers. And I used to see the managers come down like super stressed every day. And I'd be like, what's wrong with you guys, And what I recognise now is when I walk down the site and I walk into the house now where essentially all the volunteers and the staff are hanging out, as I was 10 years ago, I'm looking through the eyes of the manager, right? So I'm thinking about the person who's, I don't know, who's got the feet on the furniture and it's irritating me. I'm looking at the person who I know is eating the box of sweets that we bought that are meant to go around everyone. I'm looking at the person who I know was late for the shift this morning. And I know they're also looking at me thinking, right, this is the guy who does our schedule. This is the guy I need to ask any questions about how long I'm going to be staying here for. This is the guy I need to ask about to do with this, that workshop, and if I can change it to this. Like, so I basically feel like I'm in a role pretty much 24/7. And last year it started to bother me a bit because I started to feel like I needed to distance myself slightly from the team.
Yeah.
And then I thought, this isn't right because we're a community. I'm not just a boss, and I was once like kind of on ground level, kind of at the heart of it. And so I've made a real effort again this year, because what I recognise is the closer connection and the more communication, empathy I build with the people around me, the more it actually offsets being in a role. And obviously, like, there's like 4 or 5 people I work really close with here. And because we're on the same communication affinity, I don't care if they come up to me and ask me a question about, I don't know, when we've got to get the car fixed tomorrow or the oven's not working properly, because I don't know, it's still fun. So I think the closer I can try and build these connections with people, actually, the better. So this year I'm trying to get close to everyone again.
Yeah.
And, but it's not easy, like today, there's been a whole bunch of challenges, and I walk down there and they're probably still, the team down there, probably still expecting to see the same guy who was down there yesterday laughing and joking. But I've kind of essentially got one on me because I've got all this stress sitting on top of me today. And so it's like, to be honest, I don't really know how to answer that other than it's a journey I'm trying to work out.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Well,
and
thank you.
Some quality time with people, the better I can.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being honest. I love hearing all these ins and outs. And I think that the more we can understand all the logistics, it just builds appreciation. Like, even if I'm listening to this conversation and I'm getting ready to go take a retreat somewhere, maybe when that manager comes through, I might be a little nicer to them now because I can understand what they're going through. So I think being honest about all this is absolutely key. We don't want to create a facade that, like, oh yeah, being a manager is just the bomb. It's great. Another realization I had this week is that with the heaviness of the amount of stuff that we have to manage to keep the infrastructure in place so that we can come together, I guess I woke up this week after having a challenge and went right to my gratitude practice, and it just felt really obvious that the whole purpose, this is my own personal mission, my whole purpose is to create a space where people can come together. The more I look at the way technology is working with, as we are as humans working with technology, the way information is moving around, the way we are maybe connecting really good with some folks. Like, I can connect with you super easy. We just jump right in. It's no problem. We're sharing common ground, but we can see where there's situations where it's hard for folks to connect in. And when I was teaching a class the other day, I felt like, because I don't talk about any sort of right, left conversation and keep it very neutral, I was able to look around the room and think, it doesn't even matter what any of these people, what their actual beliefs are, in the sense of like whether we all jive on the same thing or not, because we all came together with a common goal of practicing yoga together, that having a unified purpose really gives an opportunity for us to actually feel community. So I had this kind of overwhelming feeling of like, all I really have to do is just get people together and try to make the space feel like we can all just practice. And I guess so. I just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about that? And do you feel like that's a worthy goal? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, there's certain things which supersede role. When I think about it, the little phrase I get in my head is, "Well, everyone's got a heart." And if you can hit people on that level, and it's like when I'm teaching a group down there, sometimes I've got 12 or 13 people who have all come from completely different life contexts. Some are extremely successful businessmen we get here, or some people are other professional therapists, or, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But when you've got everyone in that same environment, there's a connective vulnerability. I've never used that phrase before, but I quite like. There's the connective vulnerability
I like
when
that.
you get people in that energetic climate where you're kind of going through a group
Yeah,
transformational
yeah,
journey
yeah,
together,
yeah,
which binds you all together.
yeah.
Some people we've had here, and I haven't really had a clue who they are. And then, like, afterwards, you kind of figure out, oh, wow, you're someone who, in a different context, has got a whole lot of other prominence or whatever. And it's like, well, so what?
Yeah,
It's the same
yeah,
person who's in the
yeah,
yoga class asking me questions or
yeah,
struggling to do trikonasana or whatever.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so certain practices just supersede all of that
yeah.
completely.
No, that's cool. I hear you, Richard. Man, well, thank you so much. I really enjoy your enthusiasm and your zest for life. It's refreshing and I really appreciate it. I hope that those of you listening, if you're traveling to Portugal, you'll click on the description links where you can find Richard's website, which is creativewellness.co.uk. You'll see it there. And then the moinhos-velhos.com, which
That's
I'm
it.
probably sorry to butcher. I have not studied Portuguese either. And so with that being said, hopefully some folks will want to come visit you there and myself included. I hope to make it to Portugal to visit my friend. And when I'm there, I'm definitely going to come visit. Is there anything else, Richard, that you feel like you'd like to share with us as we turn toward our close of our session? Is there any words of inspiration, motivation, or final thoughts that you have that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, well, just if something I've said kind of touches you, and you want to get closer to it, then I'd love you to come here and just try and stay close to yourself in your life. Try and do the things which exhilarate you. Try and keep doing practices which bring you closer to your own heart. There's only one of you, and you've got to do the things which kind of switch you on. And yeah, try and stay close to what you need to do to make your life feel good for yourself. And then you benefit the people around you too. Yeah, there
Yes.
you go.
Well said. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. That was
Yeah,
fun. I appreciate it.
thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's our conversation with Richard Brook. What did you think? Thank you so much for listening. If you want to go deeper with Richard's work, be sure to click over at their retreat website, which is moinhos-velhos.com, to explore retreats and practice spaces. And also go to his website, creativewellness.co.uk, for his all his offerings, workshops, resources. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. Leaving a review is helpful. Share it with any friends who love to explore yoga, embodiment, or creative well-being. And until next time, keep practicing, keep breathing, and stay present. All right, thanks. Native Yoga Toddcast is produced by myself. The theme music is dreamed up by Bryce Allen. If you like this show, let me know. If there's room for improvement, I want to hear that too. We are curious to know what you think and what you want more of, what I can improve. And if you have ideas for future guests or topics, please send us your thoughts to info@Native Yoga Center. You can find us at nativeyogacenter.com. And hey, if you did like this episode, share it with your friends, rate it and review, and join us next time.